Good morning, I'm Andrew Haller, Managing Director and CTO of AMDH Services Limited. Thanks for attending my seminar at the ProcureX online event. I'm going to spend some time, about 15 minutes this morning, telling you about how we helped Nottinghamshire County Council with their cloud programme and how we moved through developing their strategy for cloud and moved from that into assisting them with their delivery over about 4.5 years. Implementing digital transformation isn't easy. Knowing how to introduce new technologies, how to find the staff for those technologies, and what to spend your money on, what to prioritise when, can be really challenging. Getting the right pieces of work started at the right times in order to make sure that you complete the work in the right order can be really challenging too. Getting the remediation to take place, the designs to take place, it's all a real challenge. We know that public sector bodies normally handle this in one of two ways. They typically take contract staff on board to help them, or they go to the big consultancies. We want to offer a third approach to this. We want to work alongside you as a small business, not through an agency but directly, through a framework, and we want to help you to understand how to develop those programmes, the timescales for them, what different pieces need to be in place, and when to bring those pieces online. We aren't after a short-term, quick-win piece of work. We don't want to complete the work and then run off laughing, having thrown it over the fence. We'd much rather work with you in the long term to actually mutually benefit, so that what we do and what you do can work together to deliver as a long-term lasting solution that's actually beneficial. We can really help you as well. We have true wisdom and knowledge in the digital transformation programs and can really work at your side, representing your interests. Talk to us today for a free consultation. We'd love to spend half an hour talking with you about digital transformation, about your aspirations, what the challenges are for you as a business, and see if we can help you. This is a short video from Nottinghamshire County Council. Adam Cravald, their Group Manager for Architecture and Design in ICT, explaining how we worked with them over a 4.5 year period on their cloud transformation programme.
My name's Adam Cravald and I'm the ICT Group Manager for Notts County Council. So the project that we brought Andrew in to help with was centred around our desire to consume more and more cloud-based services. The purpose of the project was twofold. One, to consume more cloud services, but then also to have an option of vacating our data centre. As a result of the work that Andrew and his team did with us, it became apparent that we could make the financial case to move directly to the cloud. And Andrew was invaluable in providing that translation between what it is that the council saw as its end state and what it is that the service provider wanted to know about the nuts and bolts of the infrastructure. The thing that concerned us most about using large multinationals is that it tended to be an off-the-shelf process that they went through, and we felt that actually having somebody in who understood us as an organisation and the setup of the infrastructure that we're currently using was going to be critical. That first stage where we were putting together the business case and looking at options for our data centre and the hosting of our applications and services, Andrew was able to demonstrate a level of understanding that engendered trust. The staff were always available to us, and so we didn't feel that we were stuck in a queue and waiting for a response. The response was always there. The ownership of that issue or problem that we had was superb, and so they always took it upon themselves to resolve whatever issue it is we have. I think the other thing that drove out the benefits for us was that while we had a set of deliverables and milestones that were articulated in the contract, if it became obvious that actually there were some additional pieces that were needed, that Andrew and his team were able to take ownership of those and provide us with the outputs that we needed to deliver a successful outcome, rather than just deliver the outputs that were contracted to. There was some flexibility in that I don't think we'd see from those large multinationals. So a key benefit of working with Andrew and his company is the ability to be able to understand the as-is estate and the complexities of an organisation like a county council. Very often what we see is that while the large organisations and the multinational suppliers are very good at understanding their own environment, they have a limited understanding of what it is that they're going to be replacing. Similarly, my in-house team have a very good and deep understanding of my current estate, but have limited exposure to the art of the possible within the cloud service providers' infrastructure. Having somebody who has a deep understanding himself of both those environments was absolutely critical to the successful delivery of the whole programme. So based on the work that Andrew completed and delivered as part of the cloud migration programme, we would have no qualms about engaging him and his company for additional pieces of work. From a personal perspective, he gave me the confidence that the right decisions were being made at the right time. And from my team's perspective, then they saw huge value in having Andrew there as a subject matter expert across multiple fields. As a result of the work that Andrew's undertaken, we feel that we've got now a strategic partner in Andrew and his company, rather than a supplier of a specific service. And that's really important to us, because we feel that we've got our strategic suppliers are ones that work with us to try and improve the services that this council delivers. It has to be remembered that Nottinghamshire County Council is not in the business of providing IT. It's in the business of improving the service that we deliver to our citizens. And Andrew and his team really get that. So it's not all about the technology, it's about the difference that technology can make. And that's why working with Andrew and his team has been so positive. The end result of the work that Andrew has done is we've got a scalable cloud environment that's secure, fit for purpose and cost effective. So it's been a really positive experience for the staff. Both myself and my colleagues will be more than comfortable in recommending Andrew and AMDH services for any organisation that's considering migration to the cloud.
We worked with Nottinghamshire County Council over a period of about 4.5 years, from project conception and development of their ICT strategy around cloud through to the delivery and eventual closure of the programme. During that period, as you can imagine, we learnt a lot of lessons. I've got 5 lessons that I want to talk through this morning. The first of those lessons is that when things change, even best laid plans need to adapt. When things change, even best laid plans need to adapt. There were a number of challenges that Nottinghamshire needed to understand in order to work out how they were going to address their cloud strategy. From moving from an on-premise delivery to a cloud native or cloud first delivery, what did they mean by that? It's in their strategy, but it was just 2 words. How did they get from A to B? So you don't just turn cloud on and hope for the best. There had to be some structure to how they were going to move there. What staff would they need to get there? And they were really keen on how much it would cost, and that was really challenging, but we worked something on that. The council had 3 main objectives with their cloud programme. The first objective was they had an ageing data centre that needed to be replaced or decommissioned. The second objective was they had a single line in their strategy for 2014 to 2017 that mentioned cloud first, and they needed to understand what that meant. And the third thing was they wanted to shift from a kind of fixed cost model to a more flexible model that allowed them to scale up and scale down their ICT provision according to what was required. How did we help them in that solution? Well, we started off by writing down for them the ICT strategy around cloud, trying to help them to understand what components would be required. Then we moved into talking with them about the business case and helping them develop a business case to take to the council's senior leadership team. And finally, we assisted them through building a cost model for cloud, not just for the bits that we were interested in, but how much their on-premise element would cost, what the changes in that data centre footprint would look like and what the costs would be, how much it would cost to get them there, so would they need any additional network connectivity and how much would that cost. We moved after that through taking it to briefing the councillors, or the members as the council calls them, and its senior leadership team directly. We also worked through requirements capture and articulation. So the council wasn't really clear at the beginning what they wanted, so we needed to do a number of discovery elements to help them understand what their current architecture looked like and what it would look like afterwards too. And one of the key things we helped the council to do was to be able to translate techie requirements into a business meaning and the business requirements into techie speak, so that the different groups were able to be on the same footprint, the same purpose about the project. The second thing we learned with Nottinghamshire was that getting to cloud is technically challenging. Getting to cloud is technically challenging. You'd think that any IT organisation would understand how many virtual machines it's got, what the storage is on those virtual machines, how many physical machines they've got, what their network infrastructure is, how many IOPS the storage delivers and which apps consume those IOPS, which apps were related to each other. But in practice, that isn't the case. Most organisations would struggle to provide that information off its own back. Also, there's a need to understand what alternative delivery models there are. When we talk about cloud, do you mean infrastructure as a service or platform as a service? Do you mean consuming services as software? Do we mean re-provisioning on-premise in a different way as private cloud? And what were the costs of all these different elements? None of this was clear. Also, if you're going to move services from on-premise into cloud, do you need to increase the connectivity in some way to facilitate that? What about latency? What impact does latency have on moving to cloud? And what's the kind of baseline footprint that you need in order to safely build upon it in cloud? None of this was clear to the council, so these things needed to be understood better. So we helped first of all by introducing tooling, working with the council to monitor more effectively their environment, their virtual machines, their storage, and to understand interconnectivity between those different components. Once we'd introduced the tooling, that allowed us to work with the council to better discover their environment. We were able to offer clearer insights into their virtual machines, into their storage usage, and we're able to work through the relevance of the different applications. There was also a requirement to connect to Azure in this instance more effectively and to increase their internet bandwidth, because when you move stuff from on-premise, things like Exchange from on-premise into Office 365, and you've got a significant number of users, the amount of bandwidth required increases significantly. And moving services into Azure is fine, but how do you access those services? What's the arrangement around DMZs? How does that translate onto Azure? We worked with the council on those elements too, to make sure that they understood what the design would look like overall, not just the bits that we were delivering, but all of it. The third thing we learnt was that security must be built into the project from the word go. Security must be built into the project from the word go. Both Azure and Office 365 are compliant with the NCSC's 14 Principles of Cloud Security and ISO 27001, 27017 and 27018, which is all good and fine. So the platform itself is secure, but whenever you build upon it, if you build insecurely on a secure base, it doesn't make what you build on it secure. So there's a requirement to differentiate and understand the difference between platform security and as-built security. Then there's also, as with most suppliers, you can pay for extra security or you can just use the free security that's built in. But you need to be able to strike the balance effectively. If you're going to pay $100,000 a year, for example, for a feature that you're only going to use once or twice a year, does that really cost in? How does the risk versus the cost work out? There's the other thing to bear in mind is that more security features enabled results in a need for more security staff in order to actually look at the results of that. There's no point having a security feature that no one ever looks at the results of. It's like going, I know about it, but I'm not bothering to do anything about it. So the key is, whatever you do with security, make sure you don't start it late. We helped the council in this by doing the Office 365 security design and the operational procedures for that. We also worked on the same things for Azure. We reviewed those proposed designs and procedures with the council's technical design authority group in order to make sure that it was understood and agreed on a broad portfolio of people within the organisation, so that when we left the work there wouldn't be a lack of understanding of what had been done and why. And we worked collaboratively with the council to implement the security measures we'd recommended. After we'd done all that, we provided extended handover, working with the council staff. We didn't do the work and then throw it over the fence and run off, but we actually sat with the council staff, helping them through these elements, making sure that they understood them, and that when we left they had sufficient documentation to continue using them. The fourth thing we learned was that complex environments are, well, they're complex. Complex environments are complex. Take an example. How does an organisation go from a large on-premise implementation of say SharePoint or Exchange to Office 365? Well, they go through a process. The process starts at discovery, moves through remediation, into setup, possibly including hybrid, through to migration, and then finishes probably at optimise. But it sounds straightforward on a slide, but in practice discovery could be weeks and weeks worth of effort. You need to find things out like whether your SAP HR system matches your Active Directory system, so the staff you actually think you employ actually are the staff you employ. You need to understand what licenses those people have, what features in those licenses they use, how mailboxes tie into each other. Then remediation, once you've completed discovery. For an organisation the size of Nottinghamshire, it involved around 130 tasks, and these weren't straightforward tasks. They were fairly complex tasks that took several months to complete. After you've done that, you move into setup, and setup again might not be straightforward. It probably involved the introduction of more on-premise service. It sounds bizarre, but to get to cloud you have to introduce more on-premise before you can reduce the on-premise in order to get there properly. And then migration itself, you have to move the mailboxes from one place, or the SharePoint sites from one place to another. And if you've got 5,000 users, 1,000 SharePoint sites, that's not a trivial task. And then even when you finish that, the piece at the end to do with optimizing it could be optimizing it around cost, or it could be optimizing it around performance. But there's a fair amount to do in that space as well. So moving between on-premise and Office 365 or Azure isn't a straightforward task. The fifth thing we learnt was that knowledge is the key to success. There are a number of questions you have to ask that surround discovery but aren't actually part of discovery, to do with strategic direction and what good looks like for an organisation. For example, if you're moving to a cloud environment, how does your backup solution change when you're in cloud? Do you build a new backup solution in cloud, or do you extend the existing one? Or do you entirely change your backup solution? Similarly, if you move to cloud, that effectively increases the cost of what's left on premise, because previously you might have shared a hardware solution between 20 apps, but if 10 of those move into cloud, then that same cost is shared between 10 apps, which effectively doubles the cost. Another thing that needs to be considered is how you handle end of life. If you're moving stuff to cloud but you're going to take 2 years to do it, and some of your hardware or software on premise might reach end of life during that period, what do you do with it? Do you budget to replace it over the 2-year period only to throw it away at the end? Or do you defer and add it to your risk register? Or do you go back to the vendor and pay extra potentially for a longer life on it? These questions all need answering, but there's no easy answer to them. The final thing that you kind of need to think about is, so if you're a cloud-first organisation, what does that mean for how you're going to provision solutions in the future? Are you going to provision them by default as SaaS, or are you going to put them into your Azure-based IaaS environment? Do you prefer PaaS? Perhaps you want to retire apps by default and only provision new apps in Office 365 and Azure. There's a range of questions that need answering. We assisted the council in this in 4 ways. First of all, we helped them to better understand what was left on premise. At the beginning of the project, there was no real idea as whether there'd be a lot left on-premise or not very much at all left on-premise. So we worked through that to help them understand that better. We also assisted in helping them understand how to modernise the on-premise infrastructure. It might be moving to cloud, but if you've got storage that takes up an entire rack unit, as an entire data centre space, that could be replaced with something more modern that has a lower cost to maintain and only occupies, say, 3U on a rack, then it's obviously beneficial to do that if you're going to continue using that piece of hardware. So we help them in that respect with regards to their storage, their backup, their remote access solutions and their internet access. We also improved the tooling and monitoring of the environment to make it easier to understand what the environment was doing, where the pinch points were and how the environment might be improved in the future. And finally, we helped with the drafting of a policy document that enabled the council to take and consider options for applications moving first to cloud and later, if that wasn't viable, to look at alternative delivery models for those applications. So you've heard 5 lessons that we learnt with Nottinghamshire County Council. When things change, even best laid plans need to adapt. Getting to cloud is technically challenging. Security must be built into the project from the word go. Complex environments are, well, they're complex, and knowledge is the key to success. At AMDH Services, we believe that your business objectives need to tie into your ICT strategy, which in turn should deliver the technology choices you make. It's important that these things flow, otherwise your ICT won't support what your business is trying to achieve. We also believe in partnering. We think that whilst the idea of a customer and a supplier work well, we think working in partnership is much better for both parties. We want to make sure that we're partnering with organisations who believe in our value. We're happy to run a discovery call with you, a free discovery call, to talk about how we can work together to help you on your journey to cloud and to better align your ICT strategy with your business objectives. Thank you very much for listening.